"Arrest her. She's refused to obey FAA orders." Those are the words a white flight attendant speaks into her radio, pointing at a 13-year-old black girl sitting quietly in seat 14B. The girl's crime: trying to study on her laptop, asking to use the bathroom existing while black at 30,000 feet. Handcuffs clicking around small wrists, tears streaming down a child's face. Shoulders shaking with sobs as security officers escort her off the plane. Racially profiled, discriminated against, targeted for nothing more than the color of her skin. And there she is, the flight attendant, standing in the background with her arms crossed, that smug smirk plastered across her face. She thinks she's won. She thinks this black child will just disappear into the system. Another statistic, another life marked by racism in uniform. But wait, she thought she could get away with racial discrimination. She had no idea who she was dealing with. Let me tell you exactly how this story of prejudice and justice unfolds. Welcome back to Unheard Truth Stories. If you're new here, you've just joined a community dedicated to truth, justice, and survival. Show some love by clicking the like and subscribe button. Before we dive deeper into this story, drop a comment. Where are you watching from, and what time is it for you right now? This is Zoe Thompson. She's 13 years old, honor roll student, straight A's debate team, captain at her middle school. And today is the biggest day of her life. But she has no idea that she's about to become another statistic, another black child targeted by ingrained racism. It's 600 in the morning in their small apartment in Brooklyn. The place is modest, cramped, even, but it's clean and filled with love. Zoe is in her bedroom, meticulously packing her debate materials into her worn backpack. She's going through her note cards one more time, lips moving silently as she practices her opening statement. Her mother, Vanessa Thompson, walks past Zoe's room. She's already in her nurse scrubs, and God, she looks exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes like bruises, her shoulders sagging under the weight of another double shift. Zoe looks up from her notes and her heart sinks a little. "Mom, you look tired. Are you working again tonight?" Vanessa forces a smile, but it doesn't quite reach her eyes. "Baby, someone's got to pay for that laptop. Those debate camps. Your future." Zoe glances at her desk where that laptop sits. A brand new MacBook Pro, $3,000. Her mother had worked 6 months of double shifts to save up for it. 6 months of coming home at midnight, too exhausted to eat, falling asleep in her scrubs. This is what sacrifice looks like in black families. Working twice as hard, getting half as much, doing everything right, and still being viewed with suspicion. On the shelf above Zoe's bed, there's a framed photo, a family photo from when Zoe was maybe 5 or 6. But the strange thing, her father's face is turned down, pressed against the wood. Zoe's finger hovers over the frame, and Vanessa notices. Her expression softens, but there's pain there too, raw and real. "Your father. He has his reasons for not being around," Vanessa says quietly. Bitterness creeps into Zoe's voice, sharp and cutting. "He's probably too busy being important." Vanessa moves quickly, crossing the room to cup Zoe's face in both hands. Her touch is gentle but firm. "Don't say that. He loves you. Sometimes love looks different than we expect." Zoe wants to argue, wants to say that real love shows up, but she bites her tongue. She's learned that lesson. Young black, bite your tongue. Don't make waves. Another lesson black children learn too early. Vanessa pulls her daughter close one more time, breathing in the scent of her hair. "You're going to that championship, and you're going to show them exactly who you are. You belong everywhere, Zoe. Don't let anyone tell you different. Those words, you belong everywhere." Vanessa has to say them because she knows the world will tell her daughter the opposite every single day. An hour later, Zoe is on the subway heading to JFK Airport alone, clutching the strap of her backpack like a lifeline. Her laptop inside her dreams, inside everything her mother has sacrificed for, inside that bag. She's nervous. She's excited. She's a 13-year-old black girl traveling alone, which means she's vulnerable in ways white children never have to think about. She has no idea that her entire world is about to be turned upside down. Zoe arrives at JFK and moves through check-in with confidence. She's flown before, though not often. The agent scans her boarding pass, smiles, and wishes her a good flight. Everything is normal. At the gate, Zoe finds a seat near the window and pulls out her laptop. Her debate notes fill the screen: arguments and counter-arguments, statistics, quotes from Supreme Court justices. She's prepared for this competition, like her life depends on it, because, in a way, it does. This competition offers a full scholarship to any university of her choice. Any university. Harvard. Stanford. This is Zoe's ticket out. Her mother's sacrifice made real. This is the dream that black families chase. Education is the great equalizer, or so they're told. Boarding begins for Flight 447 to Boston. Zoe gathers her things, slings her backpack over her shoulder, and joins the line. She's so focused on her notes still running through her opening statement in her head that she doesn't notice the woman at the aircraft door. The flight attendant checking boarding passes, but that flight attendant notices her and she doesn't like what she sees. Her name is Katherine Wilson, 34 years old, blonde hair sprayed into absolute submission. Makeup, perfect nails, perfectly manicured uniform pressed and crisp. And the moment Katherine sees this young black girl boarding her plane, her eyes narrow just a fraction. Her lips press into a thin line. Racial bias kicks in immediately. Zoe hasn't said a word, hasn't done anything wrong, but in Katherine's mind, she's already a problem, already suspicious, already someone to watch. This is what racial profiling looks like in real time. This is what implicit bias looks like. This is what prejudice looks like when it wears a uniform and a smile. She leans over to her colleague, another flight attendant named Melissa Parker, and whispers, her voice dripping with suspicion. Watch 14B closely. Melissa glances at the boarding pass in Katherine's hand, then at Zoe. She's just a kid. Katherine snaps back. Just watch her. No explanation needed. They both know what Katherine means. Watch the black girl. Zoe makes her way down the aisle to row 14. Completely oblivious. She finds her seat, 14B, middle seat, between an elderly woman with kind eyes and a businessman already absorbed in his newspaper. The elderly woman, Mrs. Ramirez, offers a warm smile. Big trip for you, sweetie. Zoe returns the smile, polite and shy. Yes, ma'am. Debate championship. Oh, how wonderful. You must be very smart. Before Zoe can respond, a shadow falls over her. She looks up. Katherine is looming over her arms, crossed. Boarding pass and ID. Zoe blinks, confusion flickering across her face. She just showed her boarding pass at the door, and she watched at least a dozen white passengers board without being asked for their ID. But she complies because that's what black children are taught from birth. Comply. Don't make waves. Don't give them a reason. Keep your hands visible. Say yes, ma'am, and no, sir. Do everything right, and maybe, just maybe, you'll make it home safe. She digs into her backpack and pulls out her school ID. Hands it over along with her boarding pass. Katherine examines both documents slowly, deliberately taking her time, making Zoe squirm in her seat. This is a power play. This is discrimination disguised as procedure. This is what it means to be black in America, constantly having to prove you belong. The plane reaches cruising altitude, and the seatbelt sign turns off with a soft ping. Passengers begin to shift in their seats, reaching for books or adjusting headphones. Zoe pulls out her laptop, carefully balancing it on the narrow tray table. The debate competition is less than 6 hours away, and she needs to review her notes one last time. Mrs. Ramirez leans over slightly, glancing at Zoe's screen. Such complicated words for someone so young, she says kindly. My granddaughter is about your age, but all she cares about is those TikTok videos. Zoe smiles politely. This is for a national competition. The topic is about institutional inequality and how to address it through legal channels. Impressive. Mrs. Ramirez says genuine admiration in her voice. You'll do wonderfully, I'm sure. Zoe begins to type, adding a few thoughts to her closing argument. The rhythm of her fingers on the keyboard is soothing, helping her forget her nervousness about flying alone, about the competition, about Katherine's suspicious glare at the door. She's been working for about 15 minutes when a shadow falls across her screen. Katherine stands in the aisle, arms crossed over her chest. You need to put that away during beverage service, she says. Voice sharp enough to make several nearby passengers look up. Zoe glances around in confusion. The beverage cart is nowhere in sight. It's still at the front of the plane, at least 10 rows away. I'm sorry, I thought. It's policy. Katherine cuts her off. Laptops closed during service. Thomas Reynolds. The businessman in the aisle seat looks up from his newspaper with a frown. He's been using his own laptop for the past 20 minutes. The cart isn't even here yet, he points out. Katherine's smile is tight professional, but her eyes are cold. It's approaching our row. Company policy. She turns her attention back to Zoe. I won't ask again. Zoe slowly closes her laptop, careful not to show any hint of frustration or defiance. She's learned that lesson too. Never let them see you react. Never give them the satisfaction of knowing they've gotten under your skin. Thank you, Katherine says, voice dripping with false sweetness before moving on. Mrs. Ramirez leans closer to Zoe. That's strange. The man across the aisle still has his laptop open. Indeed, a white man in his 40s continues typing away completely undisturbed. Katherine walks right past him without a word. It's okay, Zoe says quietly. I'll work on it later. But Mrs. Ramirez's eyes narrow slightly, her gaze following Katherine down the aisle. The older woman has seen this before. She recognizes what's happening. 20 minutes later, after the beverage cart has long passed their row, Zoe cautiously opens her laptop again. She needs this time to prepare. The competition means everything: her future, her mother's sacrifices, all culminating in tomorrow's event. She's barely typed 3 sentences when Katherine appears again, this time with Melissa in tow. Miss, I've already asked you to put that away, Katherine says. Voice louder now, designed to draw attention. Zoe looks up, confusion and the beginning of fear in her eyes. But the cart is gone, and everyone else is using their... Are you arguing with me? Katherine's voice rises a notch. Because I can report non-compliance with crew member instructions as an FAA violation. The threat hangs in the air. Several passengers are watching now. Zoe feels her cheeks burn with humiliation. She's being singled out and everyone can see it. No, ma'am, she says softly, closing her laptop again. I'm not arguing. Good. Katherine's smile doesn't reach her eyes. Keep it that way. As Katherine walks away, Mr. Reynolds gives Zoe a sympathetic glance, but quickly returns to his newspaper. Not my problem, his posture says. Don't get involved. Mrs. Ramirez pats Zoe's hand gently. This isn't right, she whispers. You've done nothing wrong. Zoe swallows hard, fighting back tears. It's okay. I'm used to it. And that perhaps is the most heartbreaking thing of all, that at 13 Zoe is used to it. Used to being treated differently. Used to having to work twice as hard for half the respect. Used to swallowing her feelings because showing emotion would just make things worse. An hour passes. Zoe has kept her laptop closed, instead reviewing her notes on her phone, keeping it low in her lap to avoid attracting Katherine's attention again. But her bladder is full, and she can't ignore it any longer. She waits until Katherine is at the front of the cabin before unbuckling her seatbelt and standing up. Excuse me, she says politely to Mr. Reynolds, who sighs dramatically as he folds his newspaper and stands to let her pass. Zoe makes her way down the aisle toward the bathroom. She's nearly there when Katherine steps directly into her path, blocking her. "Where do you think you're going?" she demands. Zoe stops, startled. "To the bathroom, ma'am. The seatbelt sign just came on." Katherine says, though it hadn't, "The plane is flying smooth as glass, not a hint of turbulence." "I'm sorry I didn't notice," Zoe says, glancing up at the signs. "They're off. But I really need to return to your seat." Katherine's voice is ice. "Now." But Zoe hesitates, genuinely confused and increasingly uncomfortable. "That's it." Katherine's face hardens. "You've been disruptive this entire flight. Return to your seat immediately, or I'll have the captain divert this flight." Zoe stands frozen, utterly bewildered. Disruptive. She's barely said a word the entire flight. She's done everything right, kept her voice low, complied with every instruction, even the unreasonable ones. "Please," she says, her voice small. "I just need to use the bathroom." "That's it," Katherine says, reaching for the interphone. "You were warned." Panic flashes across Zoe's face. "This can't be happening." All she did was ask to use the bathroom. All she did was exist in a space where Katherine didn't think she belonged. "I'll go back to my seat," Zoe says quickly, turning around. But it's too late. Katherine is already speaking into the interphone, her voice carrying throughout the cabin. "Captain, we have an unruly passenger in the main cabin refusing to comply with crew instructions, requesting security upon landing." Zoe's stomach drops. Unruly, refusing to comply. These are lies, plain and simple. But it's her word against a flight attendant's, and she knows which one people will believe. As she walks back to her seat, eyes lowered to avoid the stares of other passengers, she hears the captain's voice over the PA system. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to a security concern, we're returning to the gate. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." The plane banks slightly, beginning its turn back to JFK. And just like that, Zoe's entire future hangs in the balance. The debate competition that could change her life, she's going to miss it. All because she dared to ask to use the bathroom while black. Back at her seat, Mrs. Ramirez reaches over to squeeze her hand. "This is not right," she says, voice trembling with anger. "I saw everything. I'll speak up for you." But Zoe just stares straight ahead, tears threatening but not falling. She knows how this story usually ends. She knows what happens to black children who get labeled disruptive, unruly, threatening, no matter how small they are, no matter how innocent. The plane lands with a bump and taxis back to the gate. Passengers murmur in confusion and annoyance, shooting curious glances at Zoe, trying to figure out what she did to cause this delay. "Please remain seated," the captain announces. "Security personnel will be boarding momentarily." Zoe sits perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, trying to make herself as small as possible. Her heart pounds so hard she's sure everyone can hear it. 2 airport security officers board the plane, their uniforms crisp, their expressions stern. Katherine meets them at the front, speaking in hushed tones, gesturing animatedly toward row 14. Then they're moving down the aisle, straight toward Zoe. Everyone is watching now. Everyone is silent. "Miss, we need you to come with us," the first officer, whose nameplate reads Michaels, says. "What did she do?" Mrs. Ramirez demands, her accent thickening with emotion. "She did nothing." "Ma'am, please stay out of this," Officer Michaels responds. Zoe stands on shaky legs. "I didn't do anything wrong," she says, voice barely above a whisper. "You refuse to comply with crew member instructions," Katherine says loudly, making sure everyone hears. "You became aggressive when asked to return to your seat." "That's a lie," Mrs. Ramirez exclaims. "I was right here. She did exactly as told, even when you were being unfair. Ma'am, interfering with security is a federal offense." The second officer warns. "I'm a witness," Mrs. Ramirez insists. "I'm coming too." Zoe steps into the aisle. Legs trembling. The officers flank her, one in front, one behind. "Hands behind your back," Officer Michaels instructs. Is that really necessary? Mr. Reynolds finally speaks up. She's just a kid. But the cold metal of handcuffs is already closing around Zoe's wrists, biting into her skin. The click seems to echo throughout the cabin, a sound she'll never forget. Tears spill down her cheeks now, impossible to hold back. The humiliation burns hotter than the metal against her skin. Everyone is watching. Everyone sees her being treated like a criminal. As they lead her toward the exit, she catches Katherine's expression. Satisfaction, triumph, the look of someone who believes justice has been served, who believes she's protected her flight from a threat that never existed. What Katherine doesn't know, what none of them know, is that this isn't the end of the story. This is just the beginning, and the consequences of this moment will reverberate far beyond this plane, far beyond Katherine's imagination. Because Zoe Thompson isn't just any 13-year-old black girl, and when her father finds out what's happened to his daughter, everything will change. The airport security office is a sterile, windowless room with harsh fluorescent lighting and the distinct smell of industrial cleaner. Zoe sits in a metal chair, her hands still cuffed behind her back, shoulders hunched forward in a posture of defeat and fear. Officer Michaels stands by the door while another security officer types notes into a computer terminal. Mrs. Ramirez sits in the corner, having refused to leave despite multiple requests. Her presence is the only comfort in this cold, intimidating space. "I need to call my mom," Zoe says, her voice small but steady. "She needs to know what's happening. We'll contact your parents after we process your information." Officer Michaels replies without looking at her. "What's your full name and date of birth?" "Zoe Thompson, January 15th, 2011. The typing officer pauses. "Thompson. Any relation to William Thompson?" Zoe hesitates, then nods slightly. "He's my father." The officers exchange a glance but continue with their questions. Address 219 Myrtle Avenue, Apartment 4B, Brooklyn. The questioning continues, basic information gathered with clinical efficiency. No one asks for Zoe's side of the story. No one seems interested in why a 13-year-old honor student would suddenly become disruptive on a flight. Mrs. Ramirez speaks up from her corner. "This is outrageous. She did nothing wrong. That flight attendant targeted her from the moment she stepped on the plane." "Ma'am, we're just following procedure," Officer Michaels responds mechanically. "Your procedure is wrong," Mrs. Ramirez insists. "She is a child. Remove those handcuffs immediately. We can't do that until we complete our security assessment." The door opens and a man in a TSA uniform enters. Alexander Rivera. According to his badge, appears to be some kind of supervisor. He looks between Zoe and the officers, his expression carefully neutral. "What's the situation?" he asks. Officer Michaels hands him a form. Disruptive passenger refused crew instructions, became aggressive when confronted. Rivera glances at Zoe, taking in her school uniform, her tear-stained face, her obvious youth. Something like doubt flickers across his features. "Has anyone contacted her parents?" he asks. "We're processing her information now. I need to call my mom." Zoe says again, more urgently. "She doesn't know where I am. She'll be worried." Rivera hesitates, then nods. "Let her make a call, but Sir Protocol." "She's a minor," Rivera cuts in. "Get her mother on the line." Just as Officer Michaels reluctantly reaches for the phone, the door bursts open again. Katherine Wilson strides in, still in her flight uniform, now accompanied by the captain and Melissa Parker, the other flight attendant. "I need to file a formal incident report," Katherine announces. "This passenger was repeatedly disruptive, refused to comply with safety instructions, and exhibited threatening behavior toward crew." Mrs. Ramirez stands up, indignation radiating from her small frame. "Threatening. This child, you are the one who threatened her. You told her she couldn't use the bathroom." Katherine's eyes narrow. "Ma'am, you don't understand the situation. As flight crew, we're trained to identify potential threats." "The only threat was your prejudice," Mrs. Ramirez interrupts. The captain clears his throat. Look, I wasn't in the cabin, but my flight attendant reported a security concern, and I have to take that seriously. Of course you do, a new voice says from the doorway, but perhaps you should gather all the facts before putting a 13-year-old in handcuffs. Everyone turns to look at the man who has entered. He's tall, with dark skin and closely cropped hair peppered with grey. His suit is impeccably tailored, his presence commanding immediate attention and respect. Behind him stands another man in a flight attendant uniform. Daniel Harrison, African-American, younger than Katherine. His expression a careful mask of professionalism that doesn't quite hide his anger. "Who are you?" Officer Michaels asks. "My name is William Thompson. I'm the President and Chief Operating Officer of TransGlobal Airways." His voice is calm, but carries an undercurrent of tightly controlled fury. "And that child you have in handcuffs is my daughter." The room goes utterly silent. Katherine's face drains of color, her eyes widening in shock and dawning horror. The captain straightens a nervous tick appearing at the corner of his mouth. "Sir, we had no idea," he begins. "Clearly." William's gaze locks on the handcuffs around Zoe's wrists. "Remove those. Now." No one moves for a moment, then Rivera quickly steps forward. "Of course, sir. Right away." As Rivera unlocks the handcuffs, William's eyes meet Zoe's for the first time. Something passes between them. Recognition. Pain. A complicated history condensed into a single look. "Dad." Zoe whispers her voice, a mixture of relief, disbelief, and lingering anger. "I'm here now," William says quietly. Then his attention shifts back to the room at large, his expression hardening. "I want to know exactly what happened," he says, "and I want to know why my daughter was treated like a criminal for trying to use the bathroom on one of my airline's planes." Katherine steps forward, her professional mask slipping back into place, despite her obvious shock. "Mr. Thompson, I had no idea she was your—" "That's not the point, is it?" William interrupts, voice dangerously soft. "Whether she's my daughter or not, she's a child. Would you care to explain why you felt it necessary to have a 13-year-old girl removed from a flight in handcuffs?" Katherine falters. "She was disruptive. She refused to follow instructions." "That's not true," Mrs. Ramirez interjects. "I was sitting right next to her. This woman," she points at Katherine, "singled her out from the moment she boarded. Made her close her laptop when others were allowed to keep theirs open. Refused to let her use the bathroom when the seatbelt sign was off." William's jaw tightens. "Is that so?" Daniel Harrison steps forward now, holding up his phone. "Sir, I documented some of the interaction. I was concerned about Ms. Wilson's behavior toward the passenger, but I wasn't sure how to intervene without making the situation worse." "You recorded this without informing me?" Katherine asks, indignation rising in her voice. "I recorded a potential violation of our passenger dignity protocols," Daniel replies evenly. William holds out his hand for the phone. "Show me." As Daniel plays the video showing Katherine blocking Zoe's path to the bathroom, the false claim about the seatbelt sign and the unnecessary escalation that followed the atmosphere in the room shifts palpably. The captain watches with growing concern. Officer Michaels and Rivera exchange uncomfortable glances. Katherine's face cycles through a range of emotions, defensiveness, anger, and finally, as the reality of her situation sinks in fear. When the video ends, William hands the phone back to Daniel, his expression unreadable. "Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Your conscience does you credit." He turns to Zoe, who is now standing rubbing her wrists where the handcuffs had bitten into her skin. "Are you hurt?" he asks, his voice softer now. Zoe shakes her head, though the emotional wounds are clearly visible in her eyes. William nods once, then addresses Rivera. "I want all records of this incident. Every form, every report, every note taken. Nothing gets filed without my review." Rivera nods quickly. "Yes, sir." William then turns to Katherine, who seems to physically shrink under his gaze. Ms. Wilson, you're suspended effective immediately pending a full investigation. But, sir, that's non-negotiable. His tone leaves no room for argument. Captain Morris. I'll be speaking with you separately about your role in this situation. The captain nods stiffly, his earlier confidence evaporated. William's attention shifts to Mrs. Ramirez. Ma'am, thank you for standing up for my daughter when I couldn't. May I have your name and contact information? I'd like to personally thank you for your integrity. Elena Ramirez, she supplies straightening with dignity. And no thanks are necessary. I only did what anyone should have done. Unfortunately, Mrs. Ramirez, what anyone should have done is increasingly rare these days. William's smile is brief but genuine. Your action made a difference today. Finally, he turns to Zoe. Come on, let's get out of here. As they move toward the door, Zoe hesitates, looking back at Katherine. My debate competition, she says, her voice stronger now. I'm going to miss it because of you. Katherine looks away, unable to meet her eyes. William places a hand gently on Zoe's shoulder. You won't miss it, I promise. As they leave the security office, the contrast between them is stark. William in his expensive suit, radiating corporate power. Zoe in her school uniform, still bearing the emotional marks of her ordeal. Father and daughter separated by years of absence, but united in this moment by the ugly reality of discrimination. In the corridor outside, away from prying eyes, William stops. For a moment he seems uncertain, the powerful executive replaced by a father faced with his daughter's pain. Zoe. Where have you been? She interrupts the question, bursting from her like a dam breaking. All these years, Mom working double shifts, me traveling alone. Where were you? William's composure cracks just for a moment. It's complicated. That's not an answer. No, it's not, he agrees. And you deserve one. But right now, we need to get you to that competition. We can talk on the way. Zoe hesitates, then nods once. Despite everything, the years of absence, the unanswered questions, he showed up when it mattered most. It's not forgiveness, not yet. But it's a start. As they walk through the terminal, heads turn. William Thompson is well known in the aviation industry. His face familiar from business magazines and news segments. People whisper wondering about the school-aged girl at his side, about why the president of TransGlobal Airways is personally escorting a young passenger through JFK. They don't know they're witnessing the beginning of a reconciliation, or that the incident they've just left behind will spark a reckoning throughout an entire industry. They only see a powerful man and a young girl walking side by side toward an uncertain future, carrying the weight of the past between them. Behind them in the security office, Katherine Wilson sits alone, staring at her hands, finally beginning to understand the magnitude of what she's done. Not just to a child, not just to her career, but to the fundamental notion of justice itself. The private lounge at JFK Terminal 4 is a world away from the sterile security office. Soft lighting, plush seating, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the tarmac create an atmosphere of exclusivity and calm. A stark contrast to the chaos and humiliation Zoe experienced less than an hour ago. William speaks quietly with a staff member who nods and hurries away. Daniel Harrison, the flight attendant who recorded the incident, stands respectfully near the door awaiting instructions. Mrs. Ramirez sits nearby, having been invited to join them while arrangements are made. Zoe sits alone by the window, watching planes take off and land. Her wrists still bear faint red marks from the handcuffs. Her debate notes remain unreviewed, the competition drawing ever closer. William approaches, sitting across from her. For a moment, neither speaks. The gap between them seems wider than the physical distance, years of absence, of missed birthdays and school events, of questions without answers. I've arranged for the company jet, William says finally. We can be in Boston in less than an hour. You won't miss your competition? Zoe looks up. Why should I believe you? You haven't kept your promises before. The words hit their mark. William flinches slightly, then nods, accepting the truth in her accusation. You're right, he admits. I haven't been there for you. Not in the ways that mattered day to day. You haven't been there at all, Zoe corrects him. Period. William reaches into his pocket and pulls out his phone. After a moment, he hands it to her. Look at the photos. Confused, Zoe takes the phone. She begins to scroll through the gallery and freezes. There she is, age 10, receiving an award at school. Another photo, Zoe, at 11, competing in her first debate. Another just 3 months ago, the regional championship she won to qualify for today's event. I was there, William says quietly. In the back. Never where you could see me. I thought it was better that way. Better for who Zoe demands, voice cracking slightly. I told myself it was better for you, that my world, the publicity, the scrutiny, the pressure, would only complicate your life. He pauses. But I was protecting myself too, from having to explain my choices, from having to balance a world that never stops demanding more. Mrs. Ramirez watches them from across the room, her eyes soft with understanding. She has seen this before, fathers who believe absence is protection, who convince themselves that providing financially is enough. Your mother and I made an agreement when we separated, William continues. She wanted you to have a normal childhood away from the spotlight that follows me. I respected her wishes perhaps too completely. I supported you financially, but I stayed at a distance. Did you ever think about what I might want, Zoe asks. Did you ever think I might need a father more than I needed normalcy? William has no answer for this. The truth of her words hangs between them. The lounge door opens and a TransGlobal executive in a crisp suit enters, approaching William with visible nervousness. Sir, we have Katherine Wilson and Captain Morris waiting to speak with you, he says, and the board is requesting an emergency video conference. William nods. Tell the board I'll join in 30 minutes. As for Wilson and Morris, have them wait. After the executive leaves, William turns back to Zoe. I need to handle this situation, but I don't want to leave you alone right now. I've been alone for years, Zoe responds. I'm used to it. The simplicity of her statement, delivered without self-pity, cuts deeper than any accusation could have. William takes a breath, visibly steadying himself. Would you like to see what happens next? He asks. See how I handle this? Zoe considers this, then nods slowly. Maybe understanding who her father is, seeing him in his element, will help her understand his choices. Maybe it will help her understand herself. William turns to Daniel. Mr. Harrison, would you bring Ms. Wilson and Captain Morris in, please? And stay for the meeting. Your perspective will be valuable. Daniel nods and exits. Mrs. Ramirez rises from her seat. Perhaps I should leave you to your business matters. Actually, Mrs. Ramirez, if you're willing, I'd appreciate your presence as a witness to what occurred on that flight, William says. Your perspective is important. Moments later, Katherine Wilson and Captain Morris enter the lounge. Katherine's composure has fractured her perfectly styled hair, now slightly disheveled, her confident posture replaced with nervous tension. Captain Morris maintains his professional demeanor, but his tightly clenched jaw betrays his anxiety. Sit down, William instructs, gesturing to the chairs across from him and Zoe. They comply, neither quite able to look Zoe in the eye. Ms. Wilson. William begins, his voice measured but cold. I'd like you to explain in your own words why you felt it necessary to prevent my daughter from using the bathroom. Katherine shifts uncomfortably. Sir, I was following protocol for disruptive passengers. What was disruptive about her behavior? William interrupts. Be specific. Katherine falters. She had her laptop out when I asked her to put it away. Did other passengers have laptops out? Well, yes, but... And when she asked to use the bathroom, was the seatbelt sign on Catherine's eyes dart to Captain Morris, who subtly shakes his head. No, sir. So to be clear, William continues, you targeted a 13-year-old child traveling alone, applied rules to her that you didn't apply to other passengers, prevented her from using the bathroom when she had every right to do so, then escalated the situation to security when she questioned your instructions. Faced with the reality of her actions, stripped of justifications, Katherine has no response. William turns to Captain Morris. And you authorized returning to the gate, based solely on her report, without investigating the situation yourself. Sir, flight attendants are our eyes and ears in the cabin. Morris begins. We're trained to trust their judgment about security issues. Even when that judgment is clearly compromised by bias, William asks. Even when the security threat is a middle school student trying to use the bathroom, Morris has the decency to look ashamed. In retrospect, I should have asked for more details before making that decision. William nods once. At least you can acknowledge that much. He turns back to Katherine. Ms. Wilson, do you understand why your actions today were not just unprofessional, but deeply harmful? Katherine's eyes flick to Zoe, then away. I believed I was doing my job. Your job is to ensure passenger safety and comfort, William says. Not to exercise power over those you perceive as vulnerable. Not to inflict humiliation based on your personal biases. I don't have biases, Katherine protests weakly. Mrs. Ramirez makes a soft noise of disbelief. You treated her differently from the moment she stepped on that plane, she says. I watched you ignore white passengers doing the exact same things you punished her for. Daniel speaks up now. This isn't an isolated incident, sir. I've observed Ms. Wilson's differential treatment of passengers of color on multiple flights. I've been collecting documentation because I wasn't sure who to report it to. Katherine's head snaps up. That's not true. You're just saying that because he's... She stops herself, but the implication is clear. Because he's what, Ms. Wilson? William asks quietly. Black like my daughter. Like Mr. Harrison. Katherine has no response. William straightens, decision made. Ms. Wilson, your employment with TransGlobal Airways is terminated effective immediately. Captain Morris, you're suspended pending further review of your decision-making process in this incident. Katherine's face crumples. Sir, please, I've been with the company for 12 years. And in those 12 years, how many other passengers have you targeted? How many other children have you humiliated? How many flights have you made into unsafe spaces for people of color? William's voice remains calm, but there's steel beneath it. This isn't just about today. This is about a pattern of behavior that has no place in my airline or in any civil society. Katherine rises unsteadily. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. This is wrongful termination. Actually, Daniel says, holding up his phone, I have documentation of at least 7 similar incidents in the past month alone, and I'm not the only one who's been keeping records. Katherine's false confidence collapses. Without another word, she turns and leaves the door closing behind her with quiet finality. Captain Morris stands as well. Mr. Thompson, I accept full responsibility for my role in this situation. I should have asked more questions before authorizing our return to the gate. William nods. We'll discuss your status after a full review. For now, you're grounded. After Morris departs, William turns to Daniel. Mr. Harrison, I'd like you to send me all your documentation, and I'd like to offer you a new position heading up a passenger dignity initiative that I'm creating effective immediately. Daniel blinks in surprise. Sir, we need people with integrity and courage in leadership positions, William explains. People who stand up for what's right even when it's difficult. Your actions today demonstrated both qualities. Daniel straightens, recognizing the opportunity being offered. I'd be honored, sir. Good. We'll discuss details tomorrow. William stands. Now, if you'll excuse us, my daughter has a debate competition to attend. As Daniel leaves, Mrs. Ramirez approaches Zoe. You will do wonderfully at your competition, she says warmly. And remember, what happened today wasn't your fault. It was never your fault. Zoe nods, fighting back unexpected tears at this simple affirmation. After exchanging contact information with Mrs. Ramirez and ensuring she has transportation home, William turns to Zoe. The jet is ready. We should go. As they walk through the terminal toward the private aviation section, Zoe glances at her father. You fired her? Just like that? Yes. Because of who I am. Because I'm your daughter. William stops walking, turning to face her fully. No, because what she did was wrong. It would have been wrong no matter who you were. He pauses. But I won't pretend that your being my daughter didn't make it possible for immediate consequences to happen. Most people don't have that privilege. Zoe considers this. What about other kids who don't have powerful parents? What happens to them? A shadow crosses William's face. Often nothing happens. The system protects itself. The powerful remain powerful. The vulnerable remain vulnerable. That's not fair, Zoe says simply. No, it's not. William agrees. Which is why those of us with power have a responsibility to use it to protect those without it. That's something I haven't always understood. He meets her eyes. Something I'm still learning. As they continue toward the jet, something shifts between them, not forgiveness, yet not reconciliation, but the first tentative steps toward understanding. Zoe still has questions, still carries the pain of his absence, but she's beginning to see him not just as the father who wasn't there, but as a man capable of using his position to create meaningful change. And William, watching his daughter walk beside him, is beginning to understand that being a father means more than social support from a distance. It means presence. It means protection. It means teaching by example how to use whatever power you have to stand up for what's right. On the tarmac, the TransGlobal corporate jet waits sleek and imposing. As they board, Zoe takes in the luxurious interior, so different from the commercial flights she's taken before. Another glimpse into her father's world, a world that has always existed parallel to hers, never quite intersecting until today. We'll be in Boston in 40 minutes, William tells her as they settle into the leather seats. Plenty of time for you to review your notes before the competition. Zoe nods, pulling out her laptop. But before she opens it, she looks up at her father. Will you be there? At the competition? Yes, William says without hesitation. Not in the back this time. Right where you can see me. It's not a resolution. Not yet. But it's a promise, the first of many he'll need to keep to begin rebuilding what was broken between them. And for now, as the jet lifts off toward Boston, toward the future, it's enough to begin with. The Boston Marriott Copley Place is abuzz with activity as debate teams from across the country gather for the national championship. In the hotel lobby, students in blazers and formal attire huddle in groups, reviewing notes and practicing arguments. Their voices creating a tapestry of nervous energy and intellectual fervor. Zoe stands by the registration table receiving her competitor badge and information packet. The TransGlobal jet landed 40 minutes ago, giving her just enough time to make the check-in deadline. William stands nearby, his presence drawing curious glances from competition organizers who recognize the high-profile executive. Thompson Zoe, Brooklyn Preparatory Academy. The registrar confirms, checking her name against the list. You're in the first round, room 302, starting in 1 hour. Zoe nods, clipping the badge to her blazer. Despite everything that's happened, the ordeal on the plane, the revelation about her father, the emotional whirlwind of the past few hours, her focus is returning to the competition. This is what she's worked for. This is what matters. William approaches as she steps away from the registration table. Do you have everything you need? Yes, Zoe replies, though her hand unconsciously moves to her wrists where the ghost of handcuffs still seems to linger. William notices the gesture. Are you sure you're ready for this? After everything that's happened today, no one would blame you for I'm doing it. Zoe interrupts firmly. I didn't come this far to back out now. William studies her face, recognizing the determination in her eyes, the same determination he sees in the mirror every morning. All right. Is there somewhere quiet where you can prepare? They've set up a competitor's lounge on the mezzanine level. As they make their way toward the escalator, William's phone rings. He checks the screen. It's your mother. I should take this. Zoe tenses slightly. She hasn't spoken to her mother since this morning, hasn't told her about the incident on the plane or about her father's unexpected appearance in her life. William answers his tone professional but gentle. Vanessa. Yes, she's with me. He listens for a moment. There was an incident on the flight. Zoe's fine, but... He's interrupted by what sounds like a barrage of questions. No, I made sure she got here in time. We took the company jet. Another pause. I know. We need to talk. All of us. He glances at Zoe, then holds out the phone. Your mother wants to speak with you. Zoe takes the phone, moving a few steps away for privacy. Mom, Zoe, are you really okay? Vanessa's voice is tight with worry. What happened? Why is William with you? It's a long story, Zoe says, suddenly exhausted by the thought of explaining everything. There was trouble on the flight. A flight attendant who... She trails off, unable to find simple words for the humiliation she experienced. Did someone hurt you? Vanessa's voice sharpens. Not physically, but they put me in handcuffs, Mom. Saying it out loud brings back the feeling of cold metal against her skin, the stares of other passengers, the helplessness. They treated me like a criminal because I asked to use the bathroom. There's silence on the other end of the line, then a sound that might be Vanessa struggling to control her emotions. And William? How is he involved? He showed up. At the airport. He made it stop. Zoe glances at her father, who stands a respectful distance away, giving her space for this conversation. He got me here in time for the competition. I see. Vanessa's voice is carefully neutral. And how do you feel about that? About seeing him? It's a loaded question. One Zoe doesn't have a simple answer for. I don't know yet, she admits. We've talked a little. He says he was there at my school events, my other competitions, just in the back where I couldn't see him. Another silence. That sounds like William, Vanessa says finally. Always watching from a distance, never quite present. He's here now, Zoe points out. He says he's going to stay for the competition. Good. Vanessa pauses. Zoe, about what happened on that plane. I'm so sorry you had to experience that. No child should ever... Her voice breaks. I'm okay, Mom, Zoe says, though they both know it's not entirely true. I can handle this. You shouldn't have to handle being treated that way, Vanessa says fiercely. But I know how strong you are. You're going to win this competition, and then we're going to talk about everything that happened. Okay. Can you put William back on? Zoe returns to her father and hands him the phone. She doesn't try to listen to what they say to each other. Instead, focusing on the bustling hotel lobby, the other competitors, the normalcy of the scene that feels so at odds with the turmoil inside her. After a brief conversation, William ends the call. Your mother's catching the next flight up. She should be here in a few hours. Zoe nods, uncertain how she feels about having both her parents in the same place for the first time in years. What did she say to you? William's expression is unreadable. That's between your mother and me. But she did make one thing very clear, that I'm to make sure you're properly prepared for this competition and that nothing else upsets you today." Despite everything, Zoe almost smiles. That sounds like her mother, practical protective, focused on what matters right now. They make their way to the competitors' lounge, a quiet room with tables, comfortable chairs, and a refreshment station. Other students are scattered around, some reading intently, others pacing as they practice their arguments. Zoe finds an empty table near the window and settles in, pulling out her laptop and notes. William hesitates. "Do you want me to stay, or would you prefer to prepare alone?" Zoe considers this. Having him hover might be distracting, but sending him away feels wrong too, after everything. "You can stay," she decides. "Just give me space to focus." William nods, taking a seat across the table. He pulls out his own laptop, answering emails, and making calls in a low voice that soon becomes background noise as Zoe immerses herself in her preparation. The topic for today's debate is Institutional Inequality in America's Educational System Causes and Solutions. As Zoe reviews her arguments, the irony isn't lost on her that today she experienced firsthand the very inequality she'll be discussing theoretically. Her opening argument focuses on how unequal funding creates vastly different educational experiences for students based on zip code and race. Her counter-arguments address common claims that individual effort alone determines success, highlighting structural barriers that even the most determined students face. Time passes quickly. Before she knows it, an announcement calls all first-round competitors to their assigned rooms. Zoe closes her laptop, suddenly nervous. Not about the debate itself, she knows her material cold, but about facing a room full of strangers after the raw vulnerability of the morning's events. William seems to sense her hesitation. "You've got this," he says simply. "How do you know?" Zoe challenges. "You've never seen me debate before." "I have." William corrects her gently. "7 times, always from the back row. I've watched you dismantle arguments from students twice your age with half the preparation time." Zoe stares at him. This strange, familiar stranger who claims to know her so well. "Then you know I hate the 'you've got this' pep talk. It's meaningless." William actually smiles at that. "You're right. What I should have said is your preparation is thorough, your arguments are sound, and your delivery is consistently compelling. The statistical probability of your success is high." Despite herself, Zoe feels a laugh bubble up. "That's better." As they walk toward room 302, William stops outside the door. "I'll be right here when you're done." Zoe nods, then enters the debate room alone, straightening her shoulders and lifting her chin. Whatever happened this morning, whatever complications await with her father right now, she has a job to do. The first round pits her against a boy from a private school in Connecticut. The judges 3. Educators from prestigious universities sit at a table at the front of the room, expressions neutral as they review their scoring sheets. When Zoe's name is called, she steps to the podium, looking out at the small audience of parents, coaches, and fellow competitors. Her gaze lands on her father, who sits not in the back row, as he claimed was his habit, but in the front, directly in her line of sight. For a moment, the memory of handcuffs threatens to distract her, the humiliation, the powerlessness, the injustice of it all. But then something shifts. That experience, painful as it was, has given her insights that can't be gleaned from research alone. She knows in her bones what institutional inequality feels like. She knows the weight of assumptions based on nothing but the color of her skin. Institutional inequality in education, she begins her voice strong and clear, is not an abstract concept to be debated in ivory towers. It is a daily reality for millions of American children. Her argument flows with a passion and authority that silences the room. She cites statistics, legal precedents, historical patterns, but weaves them into a narrative that makes the abstract personal and immediate. When she concludes her opening statement, there's a moment of absolute silence before her opponent rises to offer his rebuttal. The debate continues, point and counterpoint, challenge and response. Zoe handles each question with poise, never faltering, never retreating from her central thesis that true educational equality requires structural change, not just individual effort. When the judges announce her advancement to the semi-finals, William's applause is the loudest in the room. In the hallway afterward, Zoe is approached by several other competitors, congratulating her and asking about her preparation techniques. For a few precious minutes, she's just another talented student respected for her mind rather than judged by her appearance. William watches from a distance, giving her this moment of normalcy. When the crowd disperses, he approaches with a bottle of water and a protein bar. "The semi-finals are in 2 hours," he says. "You should eat something." Zoe accepts the offerings, suddenly aware of her hunger. With everything that happened, she hasn't eaten since early morning. "Thanks." They find a quiet corner in the hotel's atrium, sitting on a bench beneath a decorative tree. As Zoe eats, William checks his phone. "The board wants an emergency meeting about this morning's incident," he says. "I've pushed it to tomorrow." Zoe looks up. "Isn't that important? Shouldn't you be handling it?" "It is important." William agrees. "But so is this. So are you." The simple statement hangs between them, a small bridge across the chasm of years. "Mom's plane lands in 40 minutes?" Zoe says, changing the subject. "Will you be okay?" Seeing her, William's expression softens slightly. "Your mother and I may have our differences, but we both want what's best for you. We can set everything else aside for today." Before Zoe can respond, her attention is caught by a familiar face across the atrium. Mrs. Ramirez, the elderly woman from the plane, now accompanied by a teenage girl who bears a striking resemblance to her. "Mrs. Ramirez," Zoe calls, standing up. The older woman turns her face, lighting up with recognition. She makes her way over, her granddaughter following. "You made it to your competition," Mrs. Ramirez exclaims. "I was so worried." "Thanks to you," Zoe says warmly. "If you hadn't spoken up for me, I only told the truth." Mrs. Ramirez dismisses the praise. "This is my granddaughter Sophia. She's competing today too in the junior division." Sophia, about 15, offers a shy smile. "Abuela told me what happened on the plane. I'm sorry you went through that." "Are you advancing to the next round?" Mrs. Ramirez asks. Zoe nods. "Semi-finals in 2 hours. Wonderful, Sophia. Doesn't compete until tomorrow, so perhaps we can watch your debate." She turns to William. "If that's all right." "Of course," William says warmly. "We'd be honored to have you there." As they chat, Zoe notices the time. "Dad, if Mom's landing soon." "Right." William stands. "Mrs. Ramirez, would you and Sophia mind keeping Zoe company while I go to the airport? Her mother's arriving, and I promised I'd meet her." "We'd be delighted," Mrs. Ramirez assures him. "Go. We'll take good care of her." As William leaves, Zoe finds herself genuinely smiling for the first time since the ordeal began. There's something comforting about Mrs. Ramirez's presence, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there are always people willing to stand up for what's right. Sophia turns out to be excellent company, sharing her own debate experiences and distracting Zoe from the lingering trauma of the morning. They discuss strategy exchange tips and even practice a few arguments together. By the time Vanessa arrives, escorted by William, Zoe is feeling centered again, ready for the next round of competition. The reunion between mother and daughter is emotional. Vanessa pulling Zoe into a fierce hug, examining her wrists where the handcuffs left marks, anger and love warring in her expression. "My brave, brilliant girl," she murmurs, brushing Zoe's hair back from her forehead. "I'm so sorry this happened to you." "I'm okay, Mom," Zoe reassures her. Really? Vanessa's gaze shifts to William, who stands a respectful distance away. Something unspoken passes between them, a shared concern for their daughter, a temporary truce in whatever complicated history they share. William tells me you've advanced to the semi-finals, Vanessa says, refocusing on Zoe. That's amazing considering everything you've been through today. Zoe straightens, drawing strength from her mother's pride. I'm going to win this, Mom. I've worked too hard not to. Vanessa smiles, recognizing the determination that has always defined her daughter. I know you will. As the time for the semi-finals approaches, Zoe returns to the competitors' lounge for a final review of her notes. This time both her parents accompany her, sitting together at the table, their presence creating a strange new reality, a family temporarily reunited by crisis. When Zoe is called for her semi-final debate, she walks into the room with renewed confidence. The audience is larger now, the stakes higher. Her opponent is a senior from a prestigious prep school known for his aggressive debate style and impressive record. But Zoe is unfazed. After facing down discrimination and humiliation that morning, after having handcuffs placed on her wrists for simply existing in a space where others thought she didn't belong, a debate challenge seems manageable by comparison. She delivers her arguments with clarity and conviction, responding to her opponent's interruptions with calm precision. When he attempts to dismiss her points about structural barriers with platitudes about personal responsibility, Zoe counters with specific examples and data that leave him floundering. The judge's decision is unanimous. Zoe Thompson advances to the finals. In the audience, Vanessa and William exchange a glance of shared pride. Whatever their past, whatever complications lie in their future in this moment, they are united by their daughter's triumph over adversity. And Zoe, standing at the podium with her victory confirmed, feels something shift inside her. A new understanding of her own resilience, of her capacity to transform pain into purpose. The debate competition is no longer just about winning a scholarship or proving her intellectual prowess. It has become something more profound, a declaration that she belongs in every space she chooses to enter, a refusal to let others define her worth or limit her potential. As she steps down from the podium, she catches sight of her parents in the front row, her mother's face shining with tears of pride, her father's expression a mixture of awe and regret for all the moments like this he's missed. And she realizes that today's ordeal, painful as it was, has given her something unexpected, a chance to redefine not just how the world sees her, but how she sees herself and her place within her fractured family. The final round awaits, and with it the opportunity to claim not just a championship title, but a new narrative for herself. One written not by the biases of others, but by her own voice, strong and clear and unafraid. The TransGlobal Airways corporate headquarters in Manhattan occupies the top 10 floors of a gleaming skyscraper, its logo visible for miles across the New York skyline. In the main boardroom on the 52nd floor, tension crackles like static electricity as William Thompson faces his executive team across the polished mahogany table. It's been 3 weeks since the incident at JFK. 3 weeks since Katherine Wilson put handcuffs on a 13-year-old girl for the crime of asking to use the bathroom while black. 3 weeks since William Thompson discovered his company harboring the very prejudice he thought he'd insulated his daughter from by keeping her separate from his world. The internal audit confirms what we suspected. William says his voice level, despite the anger simmering beneath his professional veneer. This wasn't an isolated incident. In the past year alone, we've had 87 formal complaints about discriminatory treatment from passengers of color. Most were dismissed with minimal investigation. Gregory Palmer, Executive Vice President of Operations, shifts uncomfortably in his chair. With all due respect, sir, that's a small percentage of our total passenger volume. One is too many, William interrupts. But 87 documented cases suggests a pattern, especially considering how few affected passengers actually file formal complaints. He slides tablets toward each executive at the table. Daniel Harrison has compiled evidence of discriminatory practices throughout our operation, not just in-flight incidents, but hiring patterns, promotion rates, disciplinary actions. The picture it paints isn't one I'm proud to have my name associated with. The executives scroll through the data, their expressions ranging from defensive to genuinely shocked. This is selective interpretation, Palmer argues. If you look at the same data through a different lens, I've looked at it through every lens William cuts in. I've had 3 independent analysts review it. The conclusion is the same. We have a problem with racial bias in this company, and it's time we addressed it directly. Alicia Reyes, Chief Legal Officer, speaks up for the first time. William Thompson, I agree we need to address this, but we should be careful about making any public statements that could be interpreted as admitting liability. The Wilson incident alone could expose us to significant legal action. I'm less concerned with liability than with doing what's right. William responds, and what's right is acknowledging the problem, making concrete changes, and ensuring nothing like what happened to Zoe ever happens to anyone else's child on one of our planes. He stands moving to the window that overlooks the city. I've spent the past 3 weeks talking to my daughter about her experience not just on that flight, but throughout her life. The constant small humiliations, the assumptions, the extra scrutiny. He turns back to face the room, and I've realized that I've been part of the problem. By building this company without examining these issues, by assuming my financial success would somehow protect my own child from discrimination, I've perpetuated the very system that hurt her. The room falls silent. William Thompson rarely speaks with this kind of raw emotion. So here's what we're going to do. He continues, returning to his seat. First, Daniel Harrison will head our new Passenger Dignity Initiative with a direct reporting line to me. His first task is implementing mandatory anti-bias training for all customer-facing staff with real consequences for non-compliance. Palmer starts to object, but William raises a hand. This isn't up for debate, Greg. Either get on board with these changes or tender your resignation. Palmer's mouth snaps shut. Second, William continues, we're establishing an independent oversight committee to review all discrimination complaints with authority to implement immediate corrective action. Mrs. Elena Ramirez has agreed to serve as civilian chair of this committee. Alicia raises an eyebrow. The woman from the flight. Yes? She demonstrated exceptional moral courage that day, exactly the quality we need to address these issues honestly. William looks around the table. The committee will include representatives from civil rights organizations, customer advocacy groups, and our own employees at all levels. He turns to the Chief Financial Officer. Jonathan, I need you to allocate funding for these initiatives immediately. This is a priority. Jonathan nods, making notes on his tablet. Finally, William says we're going to be transparent about both the problems we've identified and the steps we're taking to address them. I'm holding a press conference next week to announce these changes. This provokes immediate reaction, with multiple executives speaking at once. The shareholders will, our stock price could, the PR implications. William waits for the clamor to die down. I understand your concerns, but consider this: what happens when the next incident occurs and we've done nothing substantive to prevent it? What happens when the public learns we knew about these issues and chose to hide them rather than address them? He leans forward, his gaze moving from face to face. This is not just the right thing to do morally. It's the right thing to do for our business long term. Passengers who feel respected and valued become loyal customers. Employees who work in an environment of fairness and dignity become our best ambassadors. Slowly, reluctantly, heads begin to nod around the table. Good William says, "Now let's get to work." In a Brooklyn apartment that evening, Zoe sits at the kitchen table with her mother, both of them reading through the draft of the anti-discrimination policy William had sent over for their input. "He's really doing this," Vanessa says, surprise evident in her voice, "creating actual change." Zoe nods, highlighting a passage on her tablet. "The independent committee is a good idea. It means complaints won't just disappear into corporate bureaucracy. The apartment is the same as it's always been, modest, slightly cramped, filled with the accumulated memories of their life together. But something has shifted in the atmosphere. The face-down photo frame on Zoe's shelf has been turned upright. William's image, smiling beside a much younger Vanessa and 5-year-old Zoe, is visible once more. "Do you think it will make a difference?" Zoe asks. "For other kids like me, Vanessa considers this carefully. I think it's a start. Real change takes time and sustained effort." She reaches across the table to take Zoe's hand. But having someone with power acknowledge the problem and commit resources to addressing it that matters. The buzzer sounds, announcing a visitor. Vanessa rises to answer it, returning moments later with William. He looks different in casual clothes, a simple button-down shirt and slacks rather than his usual tailored suit. More approachable, more like the father in the photograph. "Sorry I'm late," he says. The meeting ran long. "We were just reviewing your draft," Zoe says, gesturing to the tablets. William sits down, accepting the cup of coffee Vanessa offers. This has become their new routine, these evening meetings, to discuss the policy changes to ensure that Zoe's experience translates into meaningful action. "What do you think?" William asks, genuine interest in his voice. "It's good," Zoe says, "but I have some suggestions." She pulls up her notes. "First, the training needs to include specific scenarios based on real incidents. General principles aren't enough. People need to see concrete examples of bias in action and how to counter it." William nods, making notes on his own tablet. "That makes sense. What else? The reporting mechanism needs to be more accessible. Not everyone has the confidence to file a formal complaint, especially if they're already feeling marginalized. Maybe an app," William suggests. "Something simple that passengers could use to document their experiences in real time." "That could work." Zoe agrees. "And it should be available in multiple languages." As they continue to refine the policy, Vanessa watches them, father and daughter, heads bent over their tablets, engaged in creating something meaningful from the pain Zoe experienced. It's not the reunion she might have imagined, not the family dynamic she once hoped for, but there's something powerful in it nonetheless. Later, as William prepares to leave, Zoe walks him to the door. "Is Katherine suing Mom? Said she might." William hesitates, then nods. "Yes, she's claiming wrongful termination. Will she win?" There's worry in Zoe's voice, concern that somehow, despite everything, justice might slip away. "No," William says with quiet confidence. "Daniel's documentation is thorough, and Mrs. Ramirez's testimony is compelling. But more importantly, Katherine's behavior violated our existing policies. The lawsuit is just her attempting to avoid accountability." Zoe nods, processing this. "And Captain Morris. What happened to him?" "He's been reassigned to ground duties while completing extensive training. His actions were wrong, but he's shown genuine remorse and a willingness to learn. This distinction between those who refuse to acknowledge their bias and those willing to confront it seems important to Zoe." "That seems fair." William hesitates, then asks the question that's been on his mind. "How are you doing?" "Really?" Zoe considers this, not wanting to offer a simple platitude. "I still think about it," she admits, "especially at night. I keep feeling the handcuffs, hearing her voice calling me aggressive when all I did was ask to use the bathroom." William's expression darkens with pain and anger on her behalf. But Zoe continues, "I'm also proud of how I've handled it. I didn't let it stop me from winning the debate championship. And now I'm helping create changes that might protect other kids." She meets his eyes directly. "That matters." William nods, understanding the resilience in his daughter, that he's only beginning to fully appreciate. It does. As he leaves, the distance between them feels less vast than it once did, not erased, but bridged by their shared commitment to turning Zoe's trauma into meaningful change. 3 months later, the grand ballroom of the Marriott Marquis in Times Square is filled to capacity for the inaugural TransGlobal Airways Dignity Summit. Civil rights leaders, aviation industry executives, government regulators, and media representatives have gathered to witness the unveiling of what's being called the most comprehensive anti-discrimination initiative in the industry's history. On stage, Daniel Harrison stands at the podium. Confidence evident in his posture, a marked change from the hesitant flight attendant who once recorded discrimination on his phone, uncertain whether speaking up would cost him his job. When we say dignity is non-negotiable, we're making a commitment that goes beyond slogans, he tells the audience. We're embedding respect into every aspect of our operation, from hiring practices to in-flight procedures to how we respond when mistakes are made. In the front row, Zoe sits between her parents, watching as the program she helped design becomes reality. She's wearing a silver pin on her blazer lapel, a small pair of wings with the word dignity engraved across them. Every TransGlobal employee in the room wears the same pin. Our training program was developed with input from diversity experts, civil rights organizations, and most importantly from passengers who've experienced discrimination firsthand. Daniel continues, including a remarkable young woman who had the courage to share her story and help us learn from it. Gazes shift to Zoe, though her name has been kept out of public materials to protect her privacy. She sits a little straighter, accepting this acknowledgement of her contribution. When Daniel concludes his presentation, William takes the stage to announce the establishment of the Transportation Equity Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to addressing discrimination across all forms of public transportation. This foundation will fund research support advocacy efforts and provide resources for individuals who've experienced discrimination while traveling. William explains, because creating change within one company isn't enough. We need industry-wide transformation. As he speaks, Zoe notices representatives from other airlines taking notes, leaning forward with interest. The competitive advantage of being first to address these issues thoroughly isn't lost on them. After the formal presentations, a reception allows attendees to mingle and discuss the initiatives in more detail. Zoe finds herself approached by a woman in her 20s who introduces herself as a flight attendant for a competing airline. "What you've started here," the young woman says, her voice low and earnest. "It's going to change things for all of us. I've wanted to speak up about what I've seen for years, but I was afraid of losing my job." "Are you still afraid?" Zoe asks. The woman glances around at the industry leaders, now openly discussing discrimination in aviation. "Less than I was yesterday," she says, with a small smile. "And I think I'll be even less afraid tomorrow." This, Zoe realizes, is how change happens not all at once, but in incremental shifts of what people believe is possible, of what they're willing to demand, of what they refuse to accept. Later, as the event winds down, Zoe finds herself standing between her parents, watching as industry competitors who normally wouldn't share information are exchanging business cards, making plans for collaborative efforts on anti-bias initiatives. "It's working," she says softly. William follows her gaze. "It's a beginning," he agrees. "The real test will be what happens in the coming months, whether these commitments translate into lasting change." Vanessa, who has taken a rare day off from her nursing shifts to attend the summit, nods. "Change isn't an event, it's a process." She looks at her daughter with pride. "But you've started something important here, Zoe. Something that matters." As they leave the ballroom together, not quite a traditional family, but connected by shared purpose and growing understanding. Zoe thinks about the journey from that terrible moment on the plane to this day of possibility and commitment. The handcuffs that once bound her wrists have, in a way she never could have imagined, helped unbind others. It's not a happy ending, not yet. Real change takes time, faces backlash, requires constant vigilance. But it's a beginning filled with hope, driven by the courage to speak truth and the determination to create justice where it has been absent. And for today, that's enough. 2 years later, the auditorium of Brooklyn Preparatory Academy is filled to capacity for the graduation ceremony. Parents clutch programs and flowers younger siblings fidget in uncomfortable formal clothes, and faculty members adjust their academic regalia as they prepare to celebrate the class of 2027. Outside the main entrance, a sleek black car pulls up, and Zoe Thompson emerges, now 15, but carrying herself with the poise of someone much older. Her graduation robe is draped over her arm, the valedictorian medal already hanging around her neck, catching the late spring sunlight. William Thompson exits the car after her, his phone buzzing with messages he's choosing to ignore for once. Behind them, Vanessa hurries from her own car, still in her nursing scrubs, having come directly from her shift at the hospital. "Did I miss anything?" she asks breathlessly. "Just the rehearsal," Zoe assures her. The ceremony doesn't start for 20 minutes. The three of them walk toward the entrance together. Not the conventional family unit they might have been in another life, but a family nonetheless, bound by love and hard-earned mutual respect. Inside, as Zoe goes to join her classmates, William and Vanessa find their seats in the front row, reserved for parents of graduating honorees. "She finished her Harvard application yesterday," Vanessa tells William quietly. "Full scholarship if she's accepted, which we both know she will be." William nods, pride evident in his expression. "She's considering deferring for a year to work with the Transportation Equity Foundation." "I know." Vanessa smiles. She wants to help expand the youth advocacy program, following in her father's footsteps in her own way. The ceremony begins with the traditional processional graduates filing in to pomp and circumstance, while parents dab at tears and snap photos. When Zoe's name is announced as valedictorian, the applause is thunderous, led by the enthusiastic cheering of Mrs. Ramirez and her granddaughter Sophia, who have become like extended family over the past 2 years. Zoe takes her place at the podium, surveying the audience with quiet confidence. The shy, cautious girl from 2 years ago has blossomed into a poised young woman, her natural intelligence now matched by hard-won wisdom. When I was asked to speak today about the future, she begins, I found myself thinking instead about belonging. About who gets to feel at home in the spaces they enter, and who is made to feel like an intruder. The audience grows still, recognizing that this will not be a typical graduation speech filled with platitudes and safe, inspirational quotes. 2 years ago, I was put in handcuffs on an airplane, Zoe continues, her voice steady. My crime was asking to use the bathroom while being black in a space where someone had decided I didn't belong. It was a moment that could have defined me as a victim. Instead, it became the catalyst for change, not just in my life, but in an entire industry. She doesn't share the full details of the incident. Most in the audience know the story already, either from news coverage of the TransGlobal Airways initiatives or from the local community's fierce protection and support of Zoe after the incident. What I learned through that experience was that belonging isn't something granted to us by others. It's something we claim for ourselves and then extend to those around us. It's saying, I have a right to be here, and so do you. From the audience, William watches his daughter with a complex mixture of emotions, pride in the remarkable young woman she's become, lingering anger at what she experienced, and deep regret for the years he missed before that pivotal day. As we leave this school and enter new spaces, colleges, workplaces, communities, we'll all face a moments when someone questions our right to be there. Zoe continues. When that happens, remember this. You belong everywhere your dreams and efforts take you. No one can diminish your worth unless you allow them to. She pauses, looking directly at her parents. And remember that while individual courage is powerful, structural change requires collective action. One voice can start the conversation, but many voices are needed to change the world. As Zoe concludes her address to resounding applause, Vanessa reaches over to squeeze William's hand briefly, a silent acknowledgement of how far they've all come, of the unexpected gifts that emerged from that terrible day. After the ceremony, amidst the chaos of photographs and congratulations, Daniel Harrison appears now the Vice President of Customer Experience at TransGlobal Airways. He presents Zoe with a small gift box. For the graduate, he says with a warm smile. A token of appreciation from everyone at the Passenger Dignity Initiative. Inside the box is a silver pin similar to the wings worn by TransGlobal employees, but unique. Engraved across it are the words, "Catalyst for Change." "You made us better," Daniel says simply. "Not just the airline, but all of us who've been part of this journey." "Thank you." Zoe pins it to her graduation robe, touched by the gesture, and all it represents the transformation of individual trauma into collective progress. As the celebration continues, William is approached by Gregory Palmer, the executive who initially resisted the anti-discrimination initiatives, but has since become one of their strongest advocates. "The Department of Transportation is adopting our reporting framework as an industry standard," Palmer informs him. "Starting next quarter, all U.S. airlines will be required to document and address discrimination complaints using our protocol." William nods, satisfied but not surprised. "And international carriers. Several have already implemented voluntary programs based on our model." The momentum is building. This is the legacy of that day on the plane, not just changes within one company, but a ripple effect throughout an entire industry, gradually transforming how passengers of color are treated in spaces where they were once routinely made to feel unwelcome. Later, as the family celebrates over dinner at Zoe's favorite restaurant, Vanessa raises her glass in a toast. To the graduate, the valedictorian, and the catalyst for change. "We couldn't be prouder." William adds his own toast. "And to new beginnings. Harvard won't know what hit them." Zoe smiles, but there's a thoughtful quality to her expression. "Before Harvard, there's something else I want to do." She takes a breath. "I want to fly to San Francisco." Her parents exchange a glance, understanding the significance of this request. Zoe hasn't been on a commercial flight since the incident. "Are you sure?" Vanessa asks gently. Zoe nods. "The foundation is opening its West Coast office next month. I want to be there for it." She meets her father's gaze. "And I need to know I can get on a plane again without carrying that fear with me." William considers this, then asks simply, "Would you like us to come with you?" "Actually," Zoe says, "I think I need to do this alone, to prove to myself that I can." She pauses. "But maybe you could both be there when I land." It's a perfect metaphor for the balance they've found as a family. Zoe's independence supported by the knowledge that her parents are there when she needs them. Neither hovering too close nor standing too far away. 1 month later, Zoe boards a TransGlobal Airways flight to San Francisco, her steps deliberate as she walks down the aisle to her seat. The flight attendant who checks her boarding pass, a young Hispanic woman wearing the now standard dignity pin, smiles warmly and says, "Enjoy your flight, Ms. Thompson." No suspicion. No unwarranted scrutiny. Just the simple courtesy every passenger deserves. As Zoe settles into her window seat, she notices the pamphlet in the seatback pocket. "Your rights as a passenger," featuring clear information about the airline's anti-discrimination policies and how to report any concerns. Midway through the flight, the woman seated next to her, a mother traveling with a young son of about 7, leans over. "Excuse me," she says hesitantly, her accent suggesting she's not a native English speaker. "The flight attendant, she will not come when I press button. My son needs medicine." Can you help? Zoe recognizes the anxiety in the woman's eyes, the fear of being ignored, of being deemed unimportant. Without hesitation, she stands. "Of course," she says. "Let me speak with her." As she makes her way to the galley, Zoe feels the weight of what she's doing, stepping into a situation where someone else feels powerless, using her voice to ensure they're heard. The flight attendant responds immediately to Zoe's request, apologizing for missing the call button and hurrying to assist the mother and child. A small incident quickly resolved, but representative of the countless invisible moments where dignity is either affirmed or denied. When the plane lands in San Francisco, Zoe exits to find both her parents waiting as promised. But there's someone else with them, Mrs. Ramirez, who has flown in specially for the foundation opening. "You did it?" the older woman says, embracing Zoe warmly. The first flight is the hardest. It helped knowing what to expect, Zoe admits. Knowing there are protocols, now systems in place. As they leave the airport together, Zoe notices a young black girl about 13 being questioned by security, while her parents look on with barely contained anger and fear. Without hesitation, Zoe approaches, introducing herself and asking if everything is all right. The security officer, noting Zoe's confident intervention and the approach of William Thompson, whose face has become well known in airports across the country, suddenly becomes more respectful, more careful in his explanation of why the girl was selected for random screening. The girl's parents, recognizing Zoe from news coverage of the Transportation Equity Foundation, are visibly relieved by the intervention. As the situation is resolved and the family allowed to continue on their way, the girl's mother whispers a heartfelt thank you. "No need to thank me," Zoe says simply. "Just remember you belong everywhere. And don't let anyone tell you different." It's the same phrase her own mother spoke to her that morning 2 years ago before she boarded the flight that would change everything. Now Zoe passes it on, not just words of comfort, but a call to action, a reminder that dignity is not a privilege to be granted, but a right to be claimed. As they leave the airport behind, stepping into the bright California sunshine, Zoe feels the weight of those handcuffs, finally fully lifted from her wrists. The memory remains. It always will, but it no longer defines her. Instead, it has become the foundation for something larger than herself, a commitment to ensuring that other children never have to experience what she did. And in that transformation from victim to advocate, from pain to purpose, she has found not just healing but a calling that will shape her life for years to come. You belong everywhere. 5 simple words that changed an industry, reunited a family, and set a young woman on a path toward creating the more just world she wants to live in. Not through wishful thinking or empty platitudes, but through the hard, necessary work of holding power accountable and building systems that protect the vulnerable. It's not a perfect ending. Discrimination still exists. Bias still operates. Change still meets resistance. But in Zoe Thompson's story, in her refusal to be defined by injustice, in her determination to transform it into something better, there is hope. Hope that dignity can become not just a slogan on a pin, but a reality experienced by all who have been told in ways both subtle and overt that they don't belong. They do belong. We all do. And because of Zoe and others like her who refuse to accept the status quo, more people will know that truth not just as an idea, but as a lived experience. That is her legacy. That is her power. That is her truth. If this story moved you, please hit the like button and subscribe to Unheard Truth Stories. These stories need to be told, and your support helps us reach more people who need to hear them. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that they belong everywhere. Drop a comment below about a time you stood up against injustice or witnessed someone else's courage make a difference. And remember, when we see discrimination happening, we all have a choice. Stay silent or speak up. Use whatever privilege you have, whatever voice you have to create the change we need. Because dignified treatment isn't special. It's what everyone deserves. Join our community of truth tellers and change makers. Together we can create a world where no one has to prove they belong.